A waitress spills hot coffee on Barron Trump, and everyone expects outrage. But what he does next leaves the entire cafe in shock. You won't believe how this story ends. It was a cold, gray afternoon in New York City, the kind of day that made everyone feel rushed and tired. People hurried from one place to another, their umbrellas popping open as they ducked in and out of cafes, trying to avoid the rain. The streets were filled with the usual sounds of honking cars, distant chatter, and the occasional siren. But inside the small cafe on Fifth Avenue, it was quieter, almost cozy. Lisa, a young waitress, stood behind the counter, wiping down tables, trying her best to keep up with the flow of customers. She was juggling orders, drinks, and a million other things in her head. She had been working long shifts for weeks, trying to make enough to cover her rent and keep up with the cost of living in the city. It wasn't easy, and today was no different. The cafe was packed, and Lisa could feel the pressure mounting with each passing minute. Her hands were trembling slightly as she picked up a tray with 2 cups of coffee, her mind racing as she tried to remember if she'd forgotten anything. "Lisa, can you take table 5 their drinks?" her manager called out, snapping her back to reality. She nodded, swallowing her nerves. "Got it." Lisa weaved through the crowded cafe, balancing the tray carefully as she made her way to the table in the back. She could feel the heat of the coffee through the thin paper cups, the aroma of freshly brewed espresso mixing with the smell of rain. The sound of murmured conversations and clinking cups filled the air. It was a normal, busy afternoon, just another day at the cafe. But then, disaster struck. As she approached table 5, a man at the next table pushed his chair back to stand up. Lisa tried to dodge him, but her foot caught the edge of his chair. The tray wobbled, and before she could regain her balance, the 2 cups of coffee flew from her hands. Time seemed to slow down as she watched in horror as the hot liquid splashed across the table and onto the man sitting there. The cafe went silent. It felt like every person in the room was holding their breath, waiting for what would come next. Lisa's heart pounded in her chest, her face flushing with embarrassment. Her first instinct was to apologize, to try and clean it up quickly, but the words got stuck in her throat. All she could do was stare at the man, who was now drenched in coffee, looking utterly stunned. It didn't take long for Lisa to recognize him. The tall, well-dressed man sitting there was none other than Barron Trump, the son of the former president. Her stomach twisted. She had no idea how someone like him would react. But in that moment, all she could think was that she had ruined her chance at keeping her job. It was a mistake she couldn't take back, and there was nothing she could do to fix it. As she stood there frozen, waiting for the storm to come, she braced herself for the worst. But Barron didn't shout. He didn't call for the manager. Instead, he looked at her, his face calm, and said, "It's okay. Accidents happen." Lisa stood there, frozen, her heart pounding in her chest. She couldn't believe what had just happened. She had spilled coffee all over Barron Trump, one of the most well-known figures in the room, and probably in the whole city. Her hands shook as she looked at him, waiting for his reaction. The entire cafe seemed to hold its breath. Every pair of eyes in the room was on her, waiting for something dramatic to unfold. But to her surprise, Barron didn't yell, didn't get angry. He simply wiped his suit with a napkin and raised his hand to stop her from speaking. "It's okay," he said softly, his voice calm and steady, as if it wasn't the huge disaster it seemed to be. "Accidents happen." Lisa blinked, her mind struggling to process his words. Did he just say it was okay? She had expected him to lash out. She had prepared for an explosion of frustration, maybe even a demand to speak to the manager. But instead, he was so composed, so understanding. "Are you okay?" Barron asked, his voice warm and sincere. He seemed genuinely concerned about her, about how she was handling the situation, more than about his own drenched suit. Lisa could barely get the words out. Her mouth felt dry, and her throat was tight with embarrassment. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to." Her voice wavered, almost breaking. "I'll get napkins, and I'll pay for the dry cleaning, I promise. I didn't mean to mess up your day." But Barron just shook his head, his calm smile never leaving his face. "Don't worry about it," he said, his tone reassuring. "Really, it's just coffee. Don't stress over it." Lisa felt a rush of relief mixed with confusion. Just coffee? Her mind was racing. Here she was, standing in front of a man who could have easily made a scene, and instead he was acting like it was nothing. She had expected the worst, but this was something else entirely. This wasn't just a random person she had spilled on. It was Barron Trump. He looked at her with kind eyes, noticing the way she was visibly shaken. "Are you sure you're okay?" he asked again. "I know that wasn't easy for you." Lisa nodded quickly, though she still felt like she was floating in a cloud of embarrassment. "I'm fine, really," she said, forcing a weak smile. "But let me at least get you a fresh coffee, on the house. It's the least I can do." Barron paused for a moment, glancing at the cafe around them. It was quiet, almost too quiet, as if everyone was waiting for his next move. He looked back at Lisa and gave her a smile that made her feel like the world was right again. "Sure," he said. "A fresh coffee sounds nice. Thanks." Lisa quickly turned to go to the counter, still in disbelief that he wasn't furious. What she had expected to be the worst moment of her day had turned into something she couldn't quite understand. But one thing was certain: Barron's kindness wasn't something she would forget. It was the first moment of grace she'd experienced in a long time. And little did she know that moment would end up changing everything. Lisa returned to the counter to get Barron a fresh coffee, her mind still reeling from the unexpected turn of events. She couldn't help but glance back at the table where Barron was sitting, wiping at his shirt with the napkin. The man had just been drenched in coffee, and yet he was acting as though nothing had happened. It was baffling, and Lisa couldn't understand it. As she waited for the coffee to brew, she felt a weight on her chest. She kept replaying the scene in her head. Was he really that calm? She had expected him to demand answers, or maybe even make a scene, but instead he had been kind. Even more than kind. He'd been understanding in a way that left her speechless. Lisa shook her head, trying to clear the thoughts swirling around in her mind. She focused on the coffee machine in front of her, the rhythmic sound of the brewing coffee grounding her for a moment. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't stop thinking about Barron's calm demeanor, the way he had reassured her when she was sure she'd just lost everything. When the coffee was ready, Lisa grabbed the cup and took a deep breath before walking back to Barron's table. As she approached, she saw him sitting quietly, looking around the cafe, completely at ease. He wasn't angry, wasn't scowling, just sitting there like any other customer. Lisa found it hard to believe that this was the same person who could have easily demanded to speak to her manager and ruined her day completely. "Here's your coffee," she said, offering him the freshly brewed cup with both hands. Barron looked up at her and smiled. "Thank you," he said simply. Lisa, still a little flustered, hesitated before speaking again. "Really, I'm so sorry about earlier. I didn't mean to cause such a mess. If you want, I can get you something else, maybe a dessert, or I'll even pay for your whole meal. Just let me make it up to you." Barron shook his head. "It's fine." "Really," he said, his voice gentle. "Like I said, accidents happen. It's just coffee. It's not the end of the world." Lisa stood there for a moment, stunned by his response. She had expected him to take the coffee, nod politely, and leave, but instead he was looking at her with such genuine kindness, like he truly meant it. He noticed the way she was still standing there, unsure of what to do, and gave her a reassuring smile. "You're doing a great job. Don't let this moment get to you," he said. "We all have rough days. It'll pass." Lisa felt a lump form in her throat. She hadn't expected this. This wasn't just about the spilled coffee anymore. It was about the way Barron had treated her, like a person, not just a waitress in a busy cafe. And for the first time in a long while, she felt seen. Before she could say anything else, Barron stood up, his coffee in hand. He pulled out a $100 bill from his wallet and slid it across the table toward her. "For you," he said. "Keep it." Lisa's eyes widened. Thank you. I didn't expect—" But Barron simply smiled, nodding as he walked toward the door. "Take care," he said before he left, leaving Lisa standing there in awe. The cafe felt quieter after he left, but Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that something inside her had changed. Lisa stood frozen at Barron's table, still staring at the $100 bill he had left behind. Her hands shook as she picked it up, not believing what she was seeing. For me? The note was simple, crisp, but it held more value than she could have ever imagined in that moment. It wasn't just money. It was a lifeline. She unfolded the small note that was tucked beneath the bill. In neat handwriting it read, "Everyone has bad days. Don't let this one stop you from moving forward. Keep going. You've got this." Lisa's heart skipped a beat. She had expected a harsh comment, maybe even a complaint about the spill, but this? This was something entirely different. She stood there for a few moments, absorbing the words, trying to process the kindness that had just been shown to her. It wasn't just about the coffee anymore. It wasn't just about the money. It was the encouragement, the belief in her at a time when she barely believed in herself. Barron Trump, the son of a former president, had just done something most people could never imagine. He had treated her with kindness, with respect, as if she was worth more than just a random waitress in a cafe. Her eyes welled up with tears. She quickly wiped them away, embarrassed to let anyone see her cry, but the feeling of gratitude overwhelmed her. She had been working tirelessly, scraping by, barely making ends meet. Days like this, days filled with pressure, judgment, and mistakes, had become the norm. She had started to feel like she was invisible, like no one noticed the effort it took to keep going. But Barron's simple act had shattered that feeling in an instant. After a moment, Lisa took the money and the note to the counter. She had no idea what to do with it, how to process what had just happened. But as she stood there, she couldn't help but feel a shift inside her. Something deep within her had changed. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't invisible after all. The cafe began to fill up again, and Lisa continued to work, but everything felt different. She moved with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in a long time. The usual anxiety, the pressure of getting everything right, seemed to melt away. She didn't have to be perfect, and she didn't have to be hard on herself. Barron had shown her that. She was human, and that was enough. A few hours later, when the lunch rush had passed and the cafe was quieter, Lisa sat down with the note in front of her. She kept reading it over and over again. "You've got this." It felt like the first time in a long time that someone had truly believed in her. She made a promise to herself right then and there. She wouldn't let this moment slip away. Barron had given her more than a tip or a fresh coffee. He had given her hope. She wouldn't waste it. Lisa kept the note with her from that day on, tucked inside her apron. Every time she felt discouraged, she pulled it out and read those simple words. It became a reminder that no matter how hard things got, there was always room for kindness and a chance to keep moving forward. The story of Barron Trump's kindness didn't stop with Lisa. Word spread like wildfire after the incident. The cafe was small, but it had a loyal customer base, And soon everyone was talking about the waitress who had spilled coffee on Barron and the surprising way he had reacted. But it wasn't just the cafe's regulars who were intrigued. Lisa's story began to gain traction online. It started with a simple social media post from one of the customers who had witnessed the incident. They shared a picture of Barron sitting calmly at the table with coffee in hand, smiling as Lisa apologized. The caption read, "Just witnessed something amazing. A young waitress spilled coffee on Barron Trump, and instead of flipping out, he treated her with kindness. He left a $100 tip and a note that said, 'You've got this.' We need more of this in the world." The post went viral. People from all over the country started sharing it. The note Barron had left behind was photographed and passed around like a symbol of hope, kindness, and understanding. News outlets picked up the story, and soon Lisa found herself at the center of a whirlwind she never could have imagined. At first, Lisa was overwhelmed. She didn't know how to handle all the attention. She wasn't used to being in the spotlight. But as the days went by, she started to see the positive impact of Barron's act of kindness. Messages flooded in from all over the world. Strangers told her that they had been inspired by the story, that it had reminded them to treat others with more compassion, especially those working in service jobs. One day, she received a message from a woman named Sarah, who worked at a busy restaurant in Los Angeles. "I saw your story," the message read, "and I just wanted to tell you that it's inspired me to be more patient with my own customers. You have no idea how much your story has touched me." Sarah's message was just one of many. The outpouring of support and encouragement flooded Lisa's social media accounts. People were sharing their own experiences of kindness in the workplace, of small acts that made a big difference in their lives. But perhaps the most heartwarming message came from Barron himself. He sent Lisa a private message, simply saying, "I'm glad I could help. You're doing great. Keep going." Those words hit Lisa harder than anything else. The man who had already shown her incredible kindness was now encouraging her to keep pushing forward, to keep moving beyond the fear and uncertainty that had held her back for so long. Lisa knew that her life had changed forever. What had started as a humiliating mistake had turned into a powerful reminder that kindness, no matter how small, could have a ripple effect. Barron's simple gesture had given her the courage to believe in herself again. And now she was using her newfound confidence to move forward. She didn't know what the future would hold, but one thing was certain. She would never forget the lesson Barron had taught her. So, what's the takeaway here? It's simple. A little kindness can go a long way. You never know what someone's going through or how your actions might affect them. And Barron Trump? He showed us that it's not about who you are or how much power you have. It's about how you treat the people around you. If this story moved you, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who could use a little inspiration today, and leave a comment below. Have you ever experienced or witnessed a moment of unexpected kindness? I'd love to hear your stories. Thanks for watching. If this story moved you, hit the like button and share it with someone who needs a little kindness today. Don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories like this one. See you in the next video.